in this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about outputting our images from ZBrush. So once you've created your render, you probably want to save that out as some sort of an image or even maybe some sort of a movie. So all you have to do is hit render, and once that nice image renders up in your canvas, to actually export just a still image, you could come into Document and just go to Export. And from here, you can export a number of different kinds of images, PSD, JPEG. If you choose JPEG, we'll just choose this and type test and hit save. It'll actually bring up a window that will allow you to do some adjustments on this. So you can do some cropping and a lot of different adjustments on this JPEG before you actually save this out. Once you're ready, you can hit OK, and then I'll save that image out. Okay. There are also ways for you to actually save out movies. And so if we go up to the movie palette here, what happens is you can kind of show your model in different ways, and it'll save that progressively into a movie, which you can then export. So you could just record yourself working. So if I just hit record, I come in and kind of moving around, you can see it's not rendered here. And now I pause that. If I go back and now play the movie, it just shows me sort of moving around. Now you'll see that that image that faded on and off, we have a title image and a fade in time. We can take that off, or we can actually remove that. And so then when we go in and we can delete the movie, we start to do it again, and we can record whatever actions we are doing, sculpting or whatever it is, and then we can pause it, and then we'll play that back, and you can see that that image doesn't fade on any longer. Now we can also come in and take a snapshot. So we could just take a snapshot here, take another snapshot here, and another one over here, and that's actually appended onto our movie. Okay, now it went really, really fast, and so you have some modifiers in here where you can decide, some of these options here. So you've got the playback speed, you've got the snapshot time, so you could set that up a little bit higher, and then you could take another snapshot and another one, and again, that's all being sort of recorded onto this movie. So then we've got those snapshots playing through. Now once you have got a movie, you can go ahead and either save that as a ZBrush movie, or you can export it, and you can export that as an MOV file. You can also create a turntable. So a lot of times you'll want to see your model kind of just spin around to be able to see it. So we could come in here and start it maybe from this position, go into our modifiers, and say, okay, I want it to spin, I want 180 frames to go all the way around. And we're going to go all the way around once in the y-axis. Okay, and our recording frames per second is going to be 24. So what you could do now is go in, and if you want this to be part of your current movie, you could just leave it as is, or you could start a new one by deleting your movie. And then we just hit turntable. You'll notice there's also an option here for the size. So we've got it in a window and medium. Okay, if we make that small, go a little bit faster. So before you hit turntable, you want to do a best preview render if you want your turntable to be nicely rendered. So then it'll go through that process of spinning this around and doing that render as it goes. So we'll let that render up for a second. So once that's rendered up, we can go into movie, and we could do a turntable. So what that'll do is go in and rotate that model based on the settings that we have, and then re-render those images. Okay, and so we'll give that a few seconds here. We won't have time to go in and save the whole thing out. That's sort of rotated a couple frames, and it'll re-render, rotate a couple frame and re-render, and so forth until it gets all the way around. So depending on your render settings, it can take a while, but it's a great way to showcase your model. And then you can export that out as a movie. Okay, so if you want to cancel that, you can just hit escape. You also have the ability to do a time lapse. So by hovering over this, you can see that it'll only record when the mouse button's released. So if you want to do a time lapse, you can do that. And then also one cool thing is that you can actually record the history. So if you have gone in and sculpted a particular model and you got all of your history, you've got it from the time that it was primitive up to the time where you've got it detailed, depending on how much history you have, you can actually record a movie based on going forward in the history or backwards in the history. So you can go back and forward just by hitting those buttons. It'll go step by step through the history and record a frame for those. And that is a really cool way to present your work sometimes, to be able to see maybe a sped up view of you sculpting and moving around and working. So that's a great thing to do as well. And again, when you've got your movie done, you can go ahead and export that out, or you can save it and load it back in. If you've saved out a Z movie, you can go ahead and bring it back in and open that up and play it as well. All right, so that's how we can kind of create some movies. There's also a timeline that you can access, and you can kind of set keys on cameras and that sort of thing. I won't really go into too much depth on that, but you can see we've got cameras selected. We can come in here and then move over here, and I'm just alt-clicking to add a keyframe. And you can see we can come around and kind of change. So you have some control over your camera as well, coming in here, and there's other channels that you can animate also. Okay, so the next thing that we'll talk about is UV creation. So this is more for if you're going to be taking a model out of ZBrush and bringing it into another application. Typically you want to have UVs laid out so that you can have a nice texture map that maybe you need to tweak, or that's going to need to be applied in a game engine or whatever application you happen to be using. So in the next lesson, we'll talk about some of the different ways that we can create UV layouts, and then also move in the next lesson after that into creating maps and exporting those before we finish up talking about software integration. So we'll go ahead and start that in the next lesson.